Hello, everyone. It is great to be here, and I know I say this probably every time we do one of these, but it might be the most exciting topic that we get to speak about. I'm Chris Walek. I'm Vice President at Motion Recruitment.
Uh, how's it going, everyone? Thank you for joining us today. My name is Greg Olsen. I manage Motion Recruitment's staffing offices that we have in kind of the greater Washington, D.C. area. I was looking in the chat. I saw some people in Virginia, Maryland, and D.C. joining, so that's awesome. But yeah, look forward to talking to you guys today.
So, Greg and I wanted to get us kicked off here because we find ourselves actually in interesting positions. I know for me, I've worked at Motion for 13 years, and I'm still involved in sales of recruiting services, staffing services, consulting services, as well as recruiting. And so, Greg and I are also actually even looking at products for our own company. Right. I mean, AI is definitely targeting the recruiting and sales sectors with a lot of these new products, and they can offer really interesting ideas. So what I think is the most fun about what we get to do is we get to see it from a lot of angles, where every day Greg and I are talking to actual engineers, building new things in AI, learning about the technologies, and then we're talking to companies and understanding, what are you trying to do with AI? Are you trying to get into agentic AI? And what are your roadblocks for that, right? And then we're also, helping our own company decide what sort of product we should be using and how we can implement AI and train AI. And so we just want to spend a few minutes to actually talk about what kind of we've seen from all of those perspectives, and hopefully shed some light. I think we could probably talk about this for 3-4 hours, Greg, maybe even multiple days. But
Probably.
But just to kick us off,
Chat would hate it.
Yeah, to kick us off, I'm gonna have you talk about what you're seeing right now for, I guess, just how companies are changing internal policies to adopt AI.
Yeah, it's it's so interesting because I feel like for the last year, pretty much you can't go anywhere without being inundated, whether it's in your own workplace or from your friends or just the news and like hearing about AI. But it's so weird in terms of the actual like implementation of it. Like I feel like we are in the top of the first inning of what's actually going to happen. So I think, we'll get to obviously like scaling teams and hiring, and probably toward the latter part of this half hour, like we'll spend some time talking about what we're seeing be successful and different pain points. But I think one of the things that I found to be the most interesting from talking to so many companies, which again, Chris and I and Motion in general, we obviously focus on helping companies scale their engineering departments predominantly, but not every company at its core is just a tech company. So it's been so interesting watching companies that don't have, IT as their main function still try to tackle this problem. And so many groups are at different spots with it right now too. So one of the things specifically over the last 6 to 8 months that I've seen be very, very important for companies as they're approaching, like, what does AI mean for us in terms of as we move forward, as we're being offensive about how we use this to be better, but also defensive to make sure that we're not behind in some way, is making sure that everyone within all the different business departments of an organization from a leadership standpoint are specifically on the same page for what does actually using AI mean for our business. What I kind of mean by that is, unless you are a very, very small company where AI is your only kind of core product, we're seeing basically companies know they'll have to use it. But what's really, really unique about AI right now is, unlike other things where it's almost just like, hey, we're migrating to a cloud database, that's a really binary thing. AI is almost more of like an existential type, like philosophical problem that companies are dealing with. And what can be so interesting is like how finance views what should be done internally with AI, or what could be used, or what is acceptable, versus what HR thinks, what leadership thinks, what engineering wants to go with. Companies that almost assume that everyone is thinking the exact same thing and kind of believing the exact same message, we're actually seeing a lot of friction start to happen. And so what's kind of interesting and what I've seen be really successful, I'm almost interested to hear kind of your thoughts on this too, is it's almost become so important to have like this pre-planning session, not on are we going to use it, we're all going to use it, but almost more this idea of like, okay, what are we actually okay with internally being done with AI? Who checks that? And then obviously that trickles all the way down to, as we're hiring people, vetting talent, are we okay with even using that to assess if someone's good or not? There's so many different kind of challenges that are presenting themselves with it. Um, but, you know, companies that I've seen either just, you know, start to really, really wrestle with just like either losing out or feeling like, oh my gosh, why do they think differently? It's almost come from just missing this step of like, okay, what does this mean for you? What are your opinions on it? How do we kind of move forward? What's your thoughts on that?
I like a lot of what you said. I take it back to in a lot of ways, actually, what happened with, I think, the cloud when it came about into the market, and a lot of companies were forced with, I guess, what I call a build versus buy decision, where it's like, are we going to, so let's take AI, are we going to build our own systems, or are we going to provide our own training? Are we going to upskill our own people, and where are we going to do that? Or are we going to purchase a product to do it, right? And that's why there's been a mad rush that at least I've seen in kind of the PE and VC spaces to dump capital into some of these ideas. There's definitely a first to market wins, I think, for some of these options. But the thing about what happens right now, and I actually really like what you said. You said we were in the first inning of AI, which I think that's a great analogy. It's just so new. What happens is companies will make these decisions, and just as we grow, and really what it is, you start to hire external talent that brings in stories of, well, here's what I just did. Here's what we did for the last 2 years over here. Or, let me just show you how we just set this up and solve this problem. We don't really have any of that right now, right? Everyone's learning AI really for the first time or just on their own. And so companies have to make build or buy decisions. We won't know which is the right decision for years from now, But I think a lot of what you said was spot on.
So I'm curious. I think we'll both have, opinions on this. One of the coolest things about working in, the DMV is our book of business will cover, obviously the public sector, the private sector. So it's been very, very interesting watching, the federal government, consulting companies, existing product companies, new product companies, obviously try to tackle this idea of, can we do more with less people? But obviously the people that we are going to add on, like it's so interesting now seeing companies wrestle with like, how do I vet someone out technically when potentially everyone almost could on paper, or if I just sent you a coding challenge, everyone could potentially have the exact same skill set or pass my test. And so we're seeing that also, if companies aren't talking about that, cause a bunch of spots to go crazy. Have you seen any changes to how companies are specifically trying to vet engineering talent, or basically folks now that there's, in some ways, I would almost say like a harder bar of assessing is someone good? Have you seen companies either change interview processes? If not, on the ground, what are you kind of seeing maybe change in the last 6 to 8 months specifically?
Yeah, so just from this is probably what I get asked the most, just from candidates and clients, but from a acquiring and vetting talent standpoint, I've seen a lot more problems than I have solutions. That's and good. So I'll expand on that. For the first time in over a decade, I have had engineers get their positions from any avenue but applying to a job ad. And that it's the lowest it's ever been for how many people say, yes, this is how I got this role, which is really interesting to me. And I don't know that I would say I have this evidential proof that AI is affecting that, but I think there's an absolute correlation, because when I do look at the tactics of some consulting companies and some offshore firms, and we have articles in CNBC and on the news about hackers using AI to create the perfect resume. And then a lot of the companies, when I talk to my clients, old or new, they'll say, yeah, we just got 800 people in the last 30 minutes. And it's like, you're hiring someone on site in Cleveland. That probably can't be true, right? And so that's what I mean by it's a problem, because now the burden is on that company to, how are we going to review these individuals and make the right choice? And what if all of these resumes look the same? There's no way I can screen 800 people. And then so you have to think, well, the solution has to be some sort of AI product, right? I have to be able to automate this, or I have to hire 80 people to review resumes and screen people all day, and that's too expensive. So then you have, potentially AI-driven resumes being screened by an AI solution, and it becomes a horrible mess. And I think that's
perfect.
Right. They're all and I think that's a good point too, Greg, where a lot of these applicant tracking systems have the scoring as well. Yeah. And what's interesting, if you're a hiring manager and you're already stretched for resources and you're already so busy in between meetings, you have to fill this role, and you see someone with a score of a 99 and a score of a 95, and the 95 resume look better, you might just say, you know what, I'm going to go screen the 99 first. And so far it's only actually created problems, and we don't have the solutions yet.
Have you, that's awesome. And have you seen, so like once someone gets past applicant tracking system, say we do find someone where it's like, okay, they're worth it. We had the first call, like let's actually keep going. Have you seen less like true, what we would call like coding challenges? Do you still see companies doing that? Have you seen like hiring processes shift at all in your day-to-day because of that? Are they still doing it the exact same? You're just being way more kind of like diligent about it. Like, has anything changed from that standpoint?
That's a good question too. And the answer is yes. And I also, I wanted to answer, I like Matt Thompson's question, which I think is it's funny, but it shouldn't be, but
Sam's loving your comment too. AI agents just screening resumes created by AI. I love that.
Right, and that's the problem. And like, Matt asked if we need to sound like AI to get through AI, and I can't say confidently yes, but probably right now, and that's an issue. So let's talk about, and that again, there are problems when something new like this comes out, and there aren't necessarily solutions. The greatest solution I have if you're a job seeker is use your network. Do, unfortunately, the manual work of reaching out to talent acquisition folks, to hiring managers, posting on LinkedIn, which I see a lot of people do. It still is honestly the best strategy, because I talked to some of the best engineers. Individual I placed this month that applied to 800 different jobs and didn't even get an interview. And he's unbelievable engineer. Now, from a interview process, because every company is changing it. That's why I answered yes. But there isn't a consistency with what they're doing. And I think that's part of the burden on the world right now, is like we're venturing through this together. I see the same kind of an analogy when people ask about upskilling. What's the best training for AI? How do I get better at it? And it's like, I don't even think we know the answer yet. We won't know for many years, right? And I wanted to ask you that after this, but just on the interview process thing, the thing that I believe is the most successful that I've seen, which does put the burden on the companies, it's a little bit more time, but you actually will do like a pair programming with an engineer and allow them to use AI just to see how they're prompting the tool. What do they do if they don't like what they get back? Do they, even in that initial prompt, is testing top of mind? Is compliance top of mind? Is security? And depending on the type of role, you'll expect an engineer to prompt and factor in different things. But like, you'd want to see that in practice, I would think. Sure. I don't know if you've seen the same or different.
I have, and it's weird. I think the companies that are you've almost seen people either try to be like super hardliners about it, where it's like, I can't give so-and-so a coding challenge because they might just use AI at home. So I'm going to bring them in and we're just going to do the most intense whiteboarding interview or paired programming exercise. I want to see what makes so-and-so tick. Like, I want to see what they can do without AI. And so that's one approach to it. And you're definitely taking that risk out of it. The weirdest thing is, though, is then once that person starts working at the company, everyone's somehow using AI also. So to what you're saying, what I've seen be really successful is if you are going to do a take-home coding challenge, I think, and even the feedback from folks that are having to do it has been super positive, is they're a little more open-ended, but they're basically encouraging someone like, hey, do this exactly like how if you worked here, show us like what your approach would be. We don't care if you use a specific model, just tell us where you did it and why and like how that happened. And that approach has been super cool. But almost going back to that strategy piece, and this is specific, I guess, to the engineering group. You need to obviously be okay with the idea of like, okay, well, what portions of our work is from AI or not from AI? But I've seen that be insanely relevant now, just because if you don't do it, you're just way more defensive about what's going on, and then you're also going to have people that are like, why am I being challenged to do something that might be totally different than how I'm actually doing stuff that's there? So yeah, it's crazy.
It is. And yeah, it's something like 95% of all jobs will be augmented by AI, which is a good thing. It will, the calculator made us all better at math, right? Or worse at math, depending on how you look at it. We could do math faster, but we didn't actually get better at math. And to me, AI is similar. And just to your point there, what was the solution that colleges and high schools would do? They would say, well, show me your work. How did you arrive at that? And that's exactly the point you were making.
I guessed C. I'm sorry.
Right.
I can show you my work.
Yep.
And I'm interested. I think a lot of people, like when Tech in Motion was putting this event together, and probably a lot of people listening right now, it's like you're either in two buckets. Like you are someone in leadership that is probably responsible for like, this is either our strategy or I'm the person responsible for helping with this strategy, and just hearing different tips from different companies, or you're a job seeker. You and I work in technology, but really we're adjacent to it. We're recruiters, we are salespeople, we are running sales offices. And but I'm interested to hear your answer too, because I think it's relevant. AI being so new, have you found yourself trying to incorporate this into how you do your job? I think I have personally felt less fear about this technology from just forcing it in my daily routine to find ways to be using it, which I have to imagine is going to compound itself. How have you kind of like been coaching people, whether they're in engineering or not in engineering, to like be able to do something that's so new without feeling like they're falling behind by not doing it, if that makes sense?
Yeah, and that's it's a heavy question. It's kind of around obviously upskilling. You're riding the wave of this whole new thing, and to be honest, a lot of what everybody has to do right now is self-learn. There is no degrees really that large ones or classes. There's some good content out there for sure, but there's no curriculum for everyone agrees this is the best way to do prompt engineering, right? And then you also have to think like AI is great on its own, but there's a different human being interacting with an AI with different perspectives, different backgrounds, probably different desired outcomes. The way that we even use adjectives and verbs will differ across cultures and time zones and boundaries. And so everyone, I think right now has to be on their own upskilling journey, mostly because and you had asked me kind of my own opinion. I saw some folks even ask like what types of products were actually being used. I think the first step in really being able to vet AI for you is understanding what it's bad at. Really, like, you know what I mean? Like, what answers do I really not enjoy? And engineers have actually been doing this probably the longest. And so they know, all right, every time I've prompted it without unit tests in mind, I've received bad code and it's broken, right? Or if I'm forgetting to mention the scale at which this needs to operate or whatever it might be. And so whatever capacity that you're in, learning how AI is responding to your prompts from an expert's opinion, right? And so for us, even, when Motion is looked at, products will always go to the subject matter expert for what this product is supposed to deliver on and see if they can almost beat the machine. And I think it's a really good exercise. And I hope a lot of companies, the thing I worry about in technology companies is, will they have the subject matter expert to try to beat the machine? Or is it just such a new thing that they hadn't been doing that they're like, well, hey, we kind of have to purchase this, right?
Yeah.
But at least for us, my advice is it's a self-learning journey. You should absolutely be using it for, I hesitate to say as much as possible because you obviously do need to learn new things, but for for very relevant things that you'd like to automate, that you as the expert knows can probably be automated or that takes you too long, and start to see where its pitfalls are, because the better you get with it, the closer to automation you will actually be, and you're of course training the model along the way. So
yeah, I think that's awesome. And I think especially as I'm so confident in what we're talking about. Obviously right now, 12 months from now when we're doing one of these, it's going to be drastically different, but for different reasons. Like it's also evolving. I think the self-learning aspect of what you're talking about, it can be almost so intimidating and daunting, because technically you can learn whatever you want. Like you can have a subject matter expert, kind of. You have to obviously vet if you trust the answers you're getting at your disposal. But that'd be my advice for even folks that are like, oh, I'm 2 years into my career. I've never had the chance to actually have to do any of the stuff that I want to be doing. There's a lot of resources to kind of be able to do that. And a lot of them don't cost any money to do it, which is such a cool time period that we're in right now, as it all relates to the same thing. We have a few more minutes. If anyone has any questions, you're obviously welcome to.
I had one more point to make, Greg, that I just have to, otherwise I'll be upset with myself, because it kind of answered some of the questions, and I think actually we're getting really good questions, which is great.
We are, for sure.
A lot people talk a lot about the market. I can tell, like, there's a lot of folks that obviously want a new role, or they're always thinking about marketability or whatever it might be. Part of it is just naturally no one's fault. There is a new technology, and it's not the answer people want to hear because it's out of our control, but it happened, and it's the world that we're in. There's such a new technology that a lot of companies are kind of stalling hiring to understand how it's going to impact their business. So I'll give you an example. Most companies can't even answer, is my senior engineer better with AI or is my junior engineer? And until they answer that, what is my hiring strategy going to be? Some companies, a lot of public companies, a lot of privately held companies that report to a board, they have to have an answer for what are you doing with your own AI. And a lot of them are looking back actually and saying, well, what's wrong with our infrastructure? What's wrong with our databases? What do we have to clean up? What policy concerns do we have that we have to change before we can even start building something new? And when you're looking back at kind of what I'll call a cleanup a little bit, it's difficult to go hire new talent because, maybe I'll just hire a contractor for 6 to 12 months to help me with the cleanup. But then after that, I'll really need these data scientists. And so that's at least a lot of what I'm seeing on the market is real uncertainty on kind of your own roadmap to try to answer these questions that you've never had to answer before. And there isn't a path laid out. You can Google it, you can talk to AI about best strategies, but it's all going to be a little bit different. And until we all go through the journey together and kind of find out what worked and what didn't work, we're probably not going to actually have that answer yet. So I think your point's right. In a year from now, we'll do this again and say different things.
I think your point is right, because I'm a little jealous. The chat couldn't agree with you more. You're getting some really positive things going on right now. So kudos to you. I think we are just about toward the end of it. So I think the next session is going to kick off basically at 1:30. Anything else you want to close out with, or any other good kind of remarks on your end you think are relevant or good?
No, I'll get carried away and talk again. Like I said, we could talk for hours about this. But I'm glad, people, hopefully we left an impression. It's certainly not enough time to talk about a topic this big, but I also think it's important to get a little focused on, okay, here are experts in this market or this area. What do they think? And I'm really excited to have everyone go to these sessions now and hear from a really, really good group of people to talk about what they're doing.
And anyone in the chat right now, feel free to obviously connect with Chris or I. You can find us on LinkedIn. And whether you have specific questions, whether you're looking for a job or even trying to expand on some of the stuff we talked about here,